The new Social Security Commissioner just admitted something shocking in a recent interview, and the numbers he's not telling you reveal a massive problem that could affect every American's retirement security. In this video, you'll discover the alarming discrepancies between what officials claim about Social Security fraud and what the data actually shows, plus the hidden issues with how Social Security numbers are managed that create opportunities for waste and abuse. By the end, you'll understand the real scope of Social Security's record-keeping problems and what this means for your benefits. Information that mainstream media isn't covering. Welcome to Financial Area, where we break down the financial issues that matter most to your future. If you want more honest analysis of government programs and financial policies, hit that like button and subscribe for weekly updates. Frank Biznano recently stepped into the role of Social Security Commissioner, and he's already making waves with some concerning statements in his first major interview. But here's what's really troubling. It's not what he's saying. It's what he's carefully not saying that should have every American paying attention. During this interview, Commissioner Biznano talked extensively about fraud opportunities within the Social Security system. He painted a picture of an agency plagued by poor record-keeping and administrative chaos that could theoretically lead to fraudulent activity. Sounds alarming, right? But here's the kicker. Throughout this entire discussion about fraud opportunities, he failed to present a single concrete example of actual fraud that has been discovered or prosecuted. Think about that for a moment. We have the head of one of America's largest government agencies talking about systemic vulnerabilities that create fraud opportunities, but he can't point to specific cases where this fraud has actually occurred. This isn't just poor communication. It's a red flag that suggests either incompetence in tracking actual fraud or a deliberate attempt to obscure the real numbers. When Biznano discusses the state of Social Security's records, he acknowledges that sloppy bookkeeping and outdated systems may create openings for bad actors. He's essentially admitting that the agency he now leads doesn't have a firm grasp on its own data. But instead of presenting a clear plan to quantify and address these issues, he speaks in vague terms about opportunities and potential vulnerabilities. This kind of bureaucratic doublespeak is exactly what allows real problems to fester while creating public confusion about the actual scope of issues within the system. The American people deserve to know specific numbers. How many cases of suspected fraud are being investigated? How much money has been lost to confirmed fraud, and what concrete steps are being taken to prevent future occurrences. The way politicians and media outlets handle discussions about Social Security fraud creates a perfect storm of public misunderstanding. They throw around terms like waste, fraud, and abuse, without providing the context that would help Americans understand whether we're talking about isolated incidents or systemic problems that threaten the entire program. This vague approach serves everyone except the people who actually depend on Social Security benefits. Politicians can point to these discussions as evidence they're addressing the problem without having to commit to specific solutions or timelines. Media outlets can generate concern and engagement without doing the hard work of investigating actual fraud rates. Meanwhile, beneficiaries are left wondering whether their retirement security is built on quicksand. The distinction between systemic vulnerabilities and actual abuse isn't just academic. It's crucial for understanding what reforms are actually needed and how urgent those reforms really are. If we're dealing with theoretical vulnerabilities that rarely translate into actual fraud, that calls for one type of response. If we're dealing with widespread ongoing fraud that's draining billions from the system, that's an entirely different crisis requiring immediate action. One of the most eye-opening aspects of Commissioner Biznano's interview was his candid discussion about how undocumented immigrants obtain Social Security numbers. He openly acknowledged that individuals who entered the country illegally are routinely issued Social Security numbers, which then provide access to various government programs and benefits. Now, before this becomes a political debate, let's focus on the administrative reality here. The commissioner is admitting that the Social Security Administration is issuing numbers to individuals whose legal status would typically preclude them from receiving benefits. This creates a paper trail and administrative complexity that the agency apparently struggles to manage effectively. What's particularly concerning is how casually this practice is discussed, as if it's just another routine administrative function, rather than a policy decision with significant implications for program integrity and taxpayer resources. The commissioner seems more concerned with the technical challenges of managing these records than with the broader questions about program eligibility and resource allocation. This revelation also highlights how Social Security numbers have evolved far beyond their original purpose as identifiers for retirement benefits. They've become de facto national identification numbers that provide access to everything from employment authorization to healthcare programs. Yet the system for issuing and tracking these numbers hasn't evolved to match their expanded role in American society. The conversation around immigrant access to Social Security numbers also reveals a troubling lack of coordination between different government agencies. The Social Security Administration issues the numbers, but other agencies use them as verification for program eligibility without necessarily having access to the full context of how those numbers were issued. This creates gaps in oversight that could theoretically be exploited, whether by immigrants seeking benefits they are not eligible for or by others seeking to game the system. Perhaps the most shocking revelation from the commissioner's interview is the scope of the dead people problem within Social Security records. Biznano acknowledged that the agency's database contains Social Security numbers for individuals who have been deceased for years, sometimes decades, yet these numbers remain active in the system. This isn't just a clerical error. It's a massive security vulnerability. When deceased individuals' Social Security numbers remain active, they can be used by identity thieves to open credit accounts, file fraudulent tax returns, or even claim benefits. The fact that the Social Security Administration knows about this problem but hasn't implemented a comprehensive solution suggests either a lack of resources or a lack of will to address fundamental data integrity issues. The scale of this problem is staggering when you consider that millions of Americans die each year. And if even a small percentage of their Social Security numbers remain active in the system indefinitely, we're talking about a database that becomes less accurate and more vulnerable with each passing year. This accumulated administrative negligence creates exactly the kind of fraud opportunities that Commissioner Biznano talks about in theoretical terms. What makes this particularly frustrating is that the technology exists to cross-reference Social Security records with death certificates and other vital records. The failure to implement such systems isn't a technical problem. It's an institutional problem that reflects deeper issues with how the Social Security Administration prioritizes data integrity and fraud prevention. The record-keeping failures extend beyond just deceased individuals. Commissioner Biznano's interview reveals an agency that struggles with basic database management, duplicate records, incomplete information, and outdated contact details for millions of beneficiaries. When you combine these administrative failures with the political pressure to process applications quickly and the complexity of determining eligibility for various programs, you create an environment where fraud isn't just possible. It's almost inevitable. Yet despite acknowledging these systemic vulnerabilities, the Social Security Administration continues to resist calls for transparency about actual fraud rates and prevention efforts. This resistance suggests that officials may be more concerned with managing public perception than with addressing underlying problems. One of the most troubling aspects of Commissioner Biznano's interview is what it reveals about the Social Security Administration's approach to transparency and public accountability. Throughout the discussion, he speaks in generalities about problems and potential solutions while avoiding specific commitments or timelines for improvement. When pressed for details about waste, fraud, and abuse within the system, Biznano deflects to discussions about opportunities and vulnerabilities rather than providing concrete data about actual losses or prevention efforts. This suggests that either the agency doesn't track fraud effectively enough to provide meaningful statistics, or officials have made a conscious decision to keep that information from the public. The American people have a right to know how their Social Security contributions are being protected, and whether the system they're paying into is being compromised by fraud or mismanagement. When officials speak in vague terms about addressing vulnerabilities without providing specific metrics or timelines, it undermines public confidence in the entire system. This lack of transparency is particularly concerning given the long-term financial challenges facing Social Security. With the trust fund projected to be depleted within the next decade unless significant reforms are implemented, every dollar lost to fraud or waste represents money that could have extended the program's solvency or maintained benefit levels for current and future retirees. The public deserves to know whether discussions about fraud and abuse are based on actual data about program losses or whether they're primarily political rhetoric designed to justify budget cuts or administrative changes. Without concrete numbers and clear accountability measures, it's impossible for taxpayers and beneficiaries to make informed judgments about proposed reforms or the agency's effectiveness. During his interview, Commissioner Biznano mentioned the possibility of transitioning to digital Social Security numbers as part of efforts to modernize the system and improve fraud prevention. While this sounds promising in theory, the details of how such a transition would work and what safeguards would be implemented remain frustratingly vague. The potential shift to digital identification systems raises important questions about privacy, security, and accessibility that weren't adequately addressed in the Commissioner's remarks. Digital systems can certainly offer improved security features and better fraud detection capabilities, but they also create new vulnerabilities and technical challenges that could be exploited by sophisticated bad actors. More importantly, technological solutions won't address the fundamental institutional problems that create fraud opportunities in the first place. If the Social Security Administration continues to struggle with basic record-keeping and interagency coordination, adding digital layers to the system could actually make problems worse rather than better. What meaningful reform would actually look like starts with acknowledging the scope of current problems and implementing transparent accountability measures. This means regularly publishing detailed statistics about fraud rates, prevention efforts, and recovery actions. It means establishing clear timelines for addressing known vulnerabilities, like outdated records for deceased individuals. And it means coordinating with other government agencies to ensure that Social Security numbers are being used appropriately across all programs and services. Real reform also requires honest conversations about the expanded role of Social Security numbers in American society and whether the current system is adequate for those purposes. If these numbers are going to serve as de facto national identification, then the standards for issuing and managing them need to reflect that reality. So, what does all of this mean for your Social Security benefits and retirement planning? First, it's important to understand that these systemic issues create uncertainty about the program's long-term financial stability that goes beyond the well-publicized trust fund challenges. When fraud and administrative waste drain resources from the system, those losses ultimately come at the expense of beneficiaries. Even if fraud rates are relatively small as a percentage of total program spending, in absolute terms, we could be talking about billions of dollars that could otherwise support current benefits or extend the program's solvency. The lack of transparency about fraud rates and prevention efforts also makes it difficult to assess the true financial health of the Social Security system. If officials are reluctant to provide concrete numbers about losses due to fraud or waste, how can beneficiaries and taxpayers make informed decisions about proposed reforms or benefit adjustments? For individuals planning for retirement, these revelations underscore the importance of not relying solely on Social Security for retirement security. While the program will likely continue in some form for the foreseeable future, the combination of long-term funding challenges and administrative problems suggests that benefits may be less generous or less reliable than many people expect. It's also crucial to monitor your own Social Security records regularly to ensure they're accurate and secure. The agency's struggles with data integrity mean that errors or fraudulent activity affecting your account might not be detected quickly through normal administrative processes. You can check your Social Security statement annually through the agency's website to verify that your earnings history is correct and that no unauthorized activity has occurred. Given the scope of record-keeping problems revealed in Commissioner Biznano's interview, it's also worth considering additional steps to protect your identity and financial security. This includes monitoring your credit reports for accounts opened using your Social Security number, being cautious about sharing your Social Security number unnecessarily, and staying informed about data breaches or security incidents that might affect Social Security Administration records. The revelations from the new Social Security Commissioner's interview paint a picture of an agency struggling with fundamental administrative challenges, while officials prioritize political messaging over transparency and accountability. The disconnect between discussions of fraud opportunities and the absence of concrete data about actual fraud suggests that the American people aren't getting the full story about problems within the system. As we've seen, these issues extend far beyond theoretical vulnerabilities to include practical problems like outdated records for deceased individuals. complex eligibility determinations for various populations, and a general lack of coordination between the Social Security Administration and other government agencies. The proposed solutions, including potential digital modernization efforts, remain too vague to inspire confidence that meaningful reform is actually on the horizon. For current and future Social Security beneficiaries, this situation underscores the importance of staying informed about administrative developments, monitoring personal records carefully, and maintaining realistic expectations about benefit levels and program reliability. While Social Security will likely continue to play an important role in retirement security for most Americans, the combination of long-term funding challenges and administrative problems suggests that prudent financial planning should include multiple income sources and contingency plans. The bottom line is that Americans deserve better than vague discussions about fraud opportunities and political rhetoric about waste and abuse. We deserve concrete data, clear accountability measures, and honest conversations about both the challenges facing Social Security and the realistic options for addressing them. Until officials are willing to provide that level of transparency, beneficiaries and taxpayers will continue to operate in an environment of unnecessary uncertainty about one of America's most important social programs. If this analysis has been helpful in understanding the real issues behind the headlines about Social Security fraud and waste, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Financial Area for more in-depth coverage of the financial issues that affect your future. We'll continue to dig beyond the political rhetoric to bring you the facts you need to make informed decisions about your financial security.